Hello, and welcome to the Gameplay Cast review for Book 15 in the Warhammer Horus Heresy series, Prospero Burns. Prospero Burns, written by Dan Abnett, tells the story of how the 6th Legiones Astartes, the Space Wolves, came to sanction the 15th Legiones Astartes, the Thousand Sons. Unlike the book Thousand Sons, where the events leading up to this tragedy are told from the point of view of Magnus and his sons, this book gives the account from a Terran academic and scholar who comes to Fenris in order to learn more about the Space Wolves and their homeworld, Fenris. He is accepted into the Wolves as a Skald, where he is tasked with recording their accounts, stories, and history. All is not how it seems, however. The blurb from the book reads as follows. The Emperor is enraged. Primarch Magnus the Red of the Thousand Sons Legion has made a catastrophic mistake that endangers the safety of Terra. With no other choice, the Emperor charges Leman Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves, with the apprehension of his brother from the Thousand Sons homeworld of Prospero. This planet of sorcerers will not be easy to overcome, but Russ and his Space Wolves are not easily deterred. With wrath in his heart, Russ is determined to bring Magnus to justice and cause the fall of Prospero. This book is more of an introduction to the Space Wolves, or the Vilka Fenric, than a comprehensive Part 2 to the Thousand Sons book. In this regard, it is a reasonably self-contained story and paints the Wolves of Fenris and their Primarch Leman Russ in a good light. The Wolves in the 30k setting have a pretty mixed reputation in my opinion, which is an achievement since Space Vikings should be the coolest guys out there. Instead, in a lot of books, they are just stupid brutes that seem to prefer to fight pretty much anyone at any time over any minor or imagined slight. There was a short in the Tales of Heresy book that made the Wolves seem really cool, but then everything else since then has kind of got my back up. Though I am told 40k Space Wolves are pure badass, so they do come good in the end. Anyway, time for the all-important question. Is this account worthy of being told at your fireside? The omens are unclear. My best Space Wolf voice. Not bad, eh? Unfortunately, this book doesn't stick the landing. The first and second acts are really engaging, there's some good characters, sequences, and actions that keep me turning the pages, but the third act feels so rushed with a final reveal that really misses the mark. I don't know. To decide if you should add Prospero Burns to your reading list or not, continue watching to hear my justification, as well as the final score of 10. As always, fear not, O ye watchers, you will be kept in the dark, as major spoilers will be held until the end of the video. What I liked most about this book was the detailed Space Wolf lore that is one of the main focal points. We get to see elements of native Fenrisian culture, insight into their home base called the Fang, and of course details on how the Legion fights, remembers its dead, and deals with Psykers and their versions of librarians, known as the Weird and called Rune Priests. Similar to Legion, another book by Dan Abnett, the story is told from the perspective of a normal human. This approach is something I generally like because it makes for a more grounded story. Though I love the Astartes and the Primarchs, it's all too easy to get lost in their world and just see regular humans as useless and boring. It also creates an air of mysticism around the Astartes, as we don't get their internal monologue, instead relying on the narrator, in this case, Caspar Hauser. This perspective and the details we get from experiencing the Space Wolves through Caspar's eyes is compelling and humanises the Wolves in a way that we haven't really seen in preceding novels. Personally, this made me understand and therefore like the Space Wolves and Leman Russ a lot more. The cool Space Viking vibe finally shines through. And we meet some interesting characters, learning their traits and personalities as the story progresses. I particularly enjoyed the section with the Rune Priest, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, let's try it, Ulvolvul Heroth, known as Longfang. As Hauser becomes more known and trusted by the Legion, and as he learns his duties as a Skald, we get more and more insight into the Vilka Fenric. We also get more details about his background and what brought him to Fenris in the first place. I'll talk more about this in the spoiler section, but suffice to say, the parts where Caspar is learning to be a Skald and chronicling for the Legion were the bits I enjoyed the most.
Heresy grows from idleness.
I think I've really enjoyed all of Dan Abnett's previous work, so it's a shame that this book is probably one of my least favourites. primarily due to the final third. I'll go into more details in the spoiler section, but I feel that all the groundwork that was put in to familiarise us with the Legion and Caspar, all of his development becoming the 6th Legion Skald, is just kind of wasted. I'll fully admit I'm biased against stories that don't end well, and I don't think this one does. My main issue is in relation to the fact that we never find out who or how the Big Bad was able to accomplish its goals. We get a rushed account of the sacking of Prospero that ends with a kind of boss fight and then it's done. It's like someone went to the trouble of making really good stone foundations and then just slapped down a mud hut.
That doesn't make sense.
The scenes at the Council of Nicaea feel a bit over the top too. Like having a load of custodians and primarchs knowing Caspar by name and reputation, but him having no idea he was that well known. Initially I thought this was cool, but now I think about it, I think this is the point where the story started to go off the rails. And on a more micro level, some of the descriptions are at times overly ornate. While atmospheric, they sometimes border on excessive. They meander on and on in Viking metaphors, which I do appreciate, but they go on so much I found I almost lost the context of what we were describing in the first place. All in all, this book gets a lot of things right. A good leading character, by no means one of my favourites, but his development as the story progresses and characterisation is generally good. We finally have a Horus Heresy book that sheds some positive light on the Space Wolves and their Primarch. Throw in a smattering of battles, a sprinkling of weird, warp magic, and we have the skeleton and core musculature of a good book. Consequently, I was gripped after the first couple of chapters. I had that need to know what was going to happen next, and that persisted for most of the book. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this is where we find the book's Achilles heel. After all this great development and lore, there is a twist at about the midway/third act point, and the pacing aggressively accelerates from there. The big reveal didn't really reveal much, and wasn't at all satisfying. Consequently, I've nerfed the novel's score significantly. Maybe a tad harshly, but I've settled on a 6 out of 10. It's definitely an above average book with elements of greatness, but I just felt chronically disappointed at the end. Moreover, the book has pretty much zero impact or importance in progressing the overarching story of the Heresy, so you can add this to the optional read section. Personally, unless you're a hardcore Space Wolf fan, I'd be tempted to give it a miss. Right, let's get into what went wrong. The main source of my disappointment is the fact that from about the midway point in the book, we find out that Hauser is essentially a sleeper agent, sent presumably by the Thousand Sons to spy on the Space Wolves. From reading the Thousand Sons novel, which I have, you get the feeling that this isn't really Magnus' style, and also that he probably wouldn't need an actual human agent like this in any case. So you are suspicious that all is not what it seems, particularly since we know the Space Wolves are going to sanction Magnus and Prospero by the end in any case. My big issue is there's literally no reveal at all. When the Athame blade is mentioned and there's a cryptic reference to the trap set for Horus, I immediately thought of my number one favourite character, Erebus. Were the word bearers using warp magic to somehow pretend to be Thousand Sons and thus frame them and ensure the Edict of Nicaea sets Magnus and Russ against each other? Logical, right?
Wrong.
Anyway, at some point in his life, Caspar has been turned into this sleeper agent and manipulated subconsciously ever since. This results in him abandoning his conservatory, which is apparently well known to the Primarchs, the Sigillite, and maybe even the Emperor, but Caspar is conveniently completely unaware. Okay, we can give it a pass, he's been psychically manipulated. By whom? For what? The only answer we get to this is when he enters a special mirror room on Prospero. He seems to be confronted by some kind of warp demon, which then comes out of his past and attacks him. After a decent battle, the Rune Priest turns up with reinforcements and destroys it. But we never find out who, what, or when he was actually turned into this unwitting spy. This reveal that it's just the primordial destroyer, or chaos in general, that has somehow inflicted him is just a bit lackluster. The whole point of the warp is to corrupt people and beings into serving chaos, yet here, chaos powers somehow just infiltrate his mind. Sent him to Fenris just to purposely get caught talking to him at the Council of Nicaea, right under the Emperor's nose, and no one could sense a warp demon just wandering around. It's just well, a bit contrived, and this lack of meaningful reveal tarnished my experience. Maybe that's just me. The last thing I'll say is I do like how the wolves are so sentimental that they don't want to kill their Skald, so instead they put him in stasis until he is needed. Again, I love the sentimentality, but if the demon inside him is dead, could they not have healed his mind? Or even, I don't know, tell the Emperor they have a dude with a door into chaos in his skull? There might be more people like him on Terra? Alas, poor Caspar, we knew him well. Anyway, that is all you get. And as always, f*** Erebus. If you want to check out Prospero Burns following this review, it's available from the Warhammer website and in audiobook form from Audible. This concludes the Gameplay Cast review of the Horus Heresy book, Prospero Burns.